Hey there, it's Wayfair here, where delivery and setup are as easy as a few taps on your phone. You're relaxing in an old hammock, scrolling Wayfair's app, when you spot it, a brand new patio set. Next thing you know, Wayfair delivers it right to your patio and sets it up. Oh, you need a new grill too? All right, Wayfair's got you covered. With Wayfair's Room of Choice delivery and fast expert setup on qualifying orders, life gets a little easier. Visit wayfair.com or the Wayfair app.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Welcome to Under One Roof MTL, where we are demystifying home ownership 1 week at a time. My name is Robin Flynn, joined as always by Fred Pichette of Fred and Martin Mortgages. Hey Fred, how are you?
Very well, Robin. How you doing?
I am good. Last day of May. June
Wow.
officially begins tomorrow. I know summer's not technically for another few weeks, but it feels like summer. It feels like summer. Finally.
Finally.
Finally, LJ Aguinaga of LJ Realties. How's it going, LJ?
It's going great. How are you?
Fantastic. I saw you were mowing your lawn this week, which is,
Just the season, we're still
it
in
is
the
summer.
spring, we had a lot of rain. It was finally a nice day out, so I was able to take care of that this week. My daughter was helping me out. She had a really good time following along. So wonderful time.
Amazing. Love to see it. The best way to celebrate spring and summer, I think, is with cookies. I've been getting Felix and Norton ads on my Facebook like crazy. These cookies look delicious, so I placed an order this weekend. So I ordered a box of cookies for myself. You can choose which cookies you want. They have all these different flavors. It's great. You can visit their store at the Blue Haven Shopping Center, by the way, 3705 St. John's Boulevard in DDO. The first person to text in the correct response to 514-790-0800 will receive cookies from Felix and Norton delivered straight to their door. Our question this week, what is a fixed rate mortgage? Now, Fred, you're not allowed to answer. I know you know this one.
No, I know, but you're back with an easy one this week, Robin. But that's okay.
We want to give away the cookies. We want people to enjoy the cookies. And if you listen to this show, you should know the answer to that question. So 514-790-0800. Lots of stuff in the news this week. I saw this interesting article about home-based businesses. I think since COVID, more and more people have chosen to start, whether it's their main business or a side hustle. They are registered businesses operating out of their homes. But apparently, this could have impacts on things like your mortgage, your insurance. So it seems harmless, registering your business to your home address, but it can raise questions. So, Fred, let's start with sort of the mortgage side. What are lenders looking for? If you have a home mortgage, are they going to want to know if you're running a business out of your home?
Well, here's the thing, lenders is insured are watching more carefully than ever. And business tied to your property, yes, as you say, can raise a red flag or trigger extra question at renewal or even at refinancing time. If your business is purely virtual, I would say, no client, no inventory, no delivery, well, the risk is extremely low. They're not going to dig to find out what you're doing at your house. But technically, your house is a residential property, should remain residential. But the cleanest solution, I would say, get a virtual office address. If you're starting a business and eventually you're planning that you're having customer coming home or lots of delivery, well, it might be a risk, Like get a virtual office address. It's cheap, professional, and keeps your home exactly what it should be. Your home, not a business address. Like you could have some, add additional question at renewal from the bank if your business has really took off. But if it's only an office address because you work from home on your computer, you won't have any problem. That's for sure.
And if you're a registered business, your business address is public information. People can look up your business registration and they'll have your home address, which you may not necessarily want people to have access to, right?
Absolutely. You go to Registraire des Entreprises of Quebec and you type, sometimes it's your name Inc. Incorporated, or sometimes it's a Quebec Inc. And yes, it's a possibility. Yeah, it's public information. Absolutely.
The other story I saw that was interesting was investment in housing construction is declining across Canada, which kind of surprised me because on this show, we're constantly talking about how the housing market needs more supplies. So, why are fewer and fewer investments being made? Now, LJ, I feel like every time I ask you questions like these, I always say, what's the situation in Quebec compared to the rest of Canada? Because I feel like it's always different here. So, is investment in housing construction declining in Quebec in addition to the rest of the country?
I believe so. I mean, to be honest, the cost of construction has gotten very, very high. I even met with some investors this week who are looking to get into development, and we kind of ran through the costs associated to it. I just went through it myself when I built a 9 unit in Point St. Charles. So I've kind of gone through development from start to finish. And when you break down the costs, it's really expensive. There's no other way of breaking it down, simply put. So when we look at that and we see the trends as to where prices are heading right now and what we can do in between, find ourselves between a rock and a hard place because I mean the cost of building is high. People are struggling with higher prices. We need some sort of support from the government. We have the GST rebate, but I think we're going to need a little bit more to push this forth right now because I mean I had a meeting with our contractors this week and their labor costs are $100 to $120 per hour for every single subtrade minimum. And when we look at that compared to 5 years back, I knew we were still getting some stuff at $50 to $60 an hour. I mean, we can't afford double the cost of construction. So this is the one of the underlying factors, as far as I'm concerned, as to why we're seeing this slowdown. And we're gonna need some government help realistically before we can correct some of these things. We have seen things slow down so much to the point that even the RBQ here in Quebec, which is the Régie des Bâtiments du Québec, the organization that oversees all construction work in Quebec, has considered making it easier for certain subtrades to work other subtrades. So right now, the way it works is if you're a painter, you need to have your card that allows you to be a painter in Quebec, and the only thing you can do is paint. Carpenter, same idea. If you can put down ceramics or tiles, again, same idea. This is one card that allows you to do this one thing. But because we're getting less and less work right now, they're looking at exploring the possibility of having a carpenter maybe be allowed to lay down tiles as well. So we can have one kind of team that can do a few more things as opposed to having to subcontract so many different things. So we'll see if this actually gets any legs underneath it or not. But the fact that the RBQ is looking at changing the way they're doing business, because we're obviously very unique, in particular the way we do with all the unions, the CCQ, all the layers that we have to deal with here. They're exploring other options, which is telling me that business is not going great.
Interesting. Have we ever talked about prefab homes on this show? I don't think we've talked about it all that much, but I feel like I see this in the US all the time where there's like literal houses on trucks being like moved down highways and then they're just sort of plopped down somewhere. Is it because of our climate that this isn't really a thing that happens as much here?
We actually have a couple of very large factories for prefab homes.
Oh,
Quebec
okay.
is very big in this. We see a lot of it. Bonneville Homes is actually one of the
Yeah.
examples that do prefab homes. It's very common in the Laurentians or for cottage country. When we're looking to do kind of a bungalow style home, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom. They have different configurations. And the meeting I had this week was actually somebody who wanted to do prefab homes, are using like a prefab material to make these homes a reality. So I think that with the cost of everything going up so much, we're going to see more and more of that. And one of my concerns was I'm not sure the construction industry is going to like this because if you can build a house in 3 days as opposed to 3 months, there's going to be a squeeze of costs as well, right? So maybe it's a question, can we build so much more and we can kind of offset that way or another. But because of all the unions that we have here in Quebec, it's always a concern of whose best interest are they working in? Are they working in the clientele's best interest and really looking to keep costs down? Or everyone has to get paid because everyone's unionized and everyone has a piece of the pie that they have to eat?
Yeah, but LG, I just serve a client myself too that wants to buy a prefab house, and at the end of the day, buying the land plus the house, it not necessarily costs him less than if he was building a regular home. Like I think the problem is the affordability here more than anything else.
I think it comes down to the land cost, 100%. The land cost can play a huge role one way or another, depending on where we go. But when we look at these prefab homes and the total cost, I mean, it is definitely less expensive to go with a prefab home.
Yeah.
If it ends up being more, it's because the contractors are taking their cut, because I saw how long it took me to build this building. I see how long it would have taken if we literally just brought something in and stuck it onto the ground. There's a huge time difference here. So
Quickly, before we get to our traffic break, I wanted to talk about this as well. Kevin Warsh was sworn in this week as chair of the U.S. Federal Reserve. That's basically the American equivalent of the Bank of Canada. So economists think he's going to be more aggressive with rate cuts than his predecessor was. I'm curious what sort of impact you think this might have on the Bank of Canada's decisions on interest rates. I know they do follow what the US Federal Reserve is doing. They have not always been in lockstep. Canada has cut rates when the US Federal Reserve was holding rates in the last year, I believe. Um, so I'm curious what sort of impact you think this might have if he's making interest rate cuts. Will the Bank of Canada do so as well, or are we still expecting them to sort of hold the course for the next little while?
What happened if the U.S. Fed start to cut rates for Canadian? Probably your Canadian dollar will get stronger because they will cut their interest rate, which is great for shopping across the border, but it'll be tougher for exporter. And at the end of the day, in Canada, as you say, we already cut the interest rate 9 times since 2024, which is where the or Bank of Canada will keep their approach of wait and see mode, where the market is going. I don't see a big change here in Canada because we're already looking at what's going on the other side of the border. But I think we're on statu quo right now. I think it's great. The market is pretty stable.
I think that, look, I was talking to my friend who's an economist last weekend at a kid's birthday party, and we're kind of going back and forth. Her main focus is interest rates, where they should be, where they're heading, and they make bets on what's going to happen with interest rates. And she was saying, look, the reality is, I mean, this all sits on how large of an impact the war in the Middle East is going to have on our oil supplies and the cost of oil, which will then translate into food and will then translate into everything else. We don't expect shelter costs to be shifted at all right now with what we're seeing. We know oil is going to be shifted, obviously. The bigger question is food and energy. And based on that, we're going to see what other impacts are going to happen into our market, into our economy. And that's really going to be what's going to push this wave one way or another. She said even that there's room for interest rates to go down, but it's all dependent on how much of a shift we see right now with the war in the Middle East. So it's day by day. Obviously, every day we'll get a little bit more information. We'll see where this actually ends up landing. But I think that even if the US were to go down, we went down significantly more than they did in the last 12 months. And now we've held steady since September last year. They have room to go down before kind of catching up to the adjustments that we've already made in our market.
Interesting. Okay, still to come. How much is your home really worth? LJ has the answer for you after we check traffic at the CJD 800 Traffic Center. This is Under One Roof MTL on CJD 800. I'm Robin. That's LJ. That is Fred. How much is your home really worth? This is a conversation I have with my friends who are homeowners all the time. How much do you think I could sell my house for? I say, guys, I hang out with all these cool real estate and mortgage guys, but I am not a licensed professional. I can't answer that question. I can merely point you in their direction. So, LJ, imagine this is a question you get asked a lot. People come to you, well, LJ, if I wanted to sell my home, how much could I get for this home? So what goes into sort of figuring out what a home is actually worth?
It's a market evaluation, right? So there's a couple things that we're going to do. The first thing is we're going to assess the condition of the property. Ideally, we do a walkthrough of the property, or we'll look at photos, or we'll look at the old listing. We'll see where we can get information. We're going to go to that. And then after that, we look at active comparables to understand where the market's at in terms of who we're going to be competing against. But more importantly, we're going to look at sold comparables to see what people have actually transacted at. Because it's nice and dandy that your neighbor wants $1 million for his home, but if the closest comp sold for 850, we're a far cry away from that price point, So we look at the two things and we decide on what our pricing strategy is going to be in order to make us competitive and make us attractive to the people who are currently shopping and looking. So we prepare what we call a comparative market analysis. We look at least 4 sold and 4 active comparables. We look at sometimes more data, especially for condos. We might do a price per square foot analysis. So again, it's very data heavy, and we look at what we compare with. And from there, we present a valuation that will allow us to get you top dollar for your home ultimately. And that's when the conversation begins, because without a fail, just about every single time, the value that I have for the property is lower than the seller hopes or wished or established the value for the property was. Because without fail, everybody feels that the pool they added, the custom closets they put in, the fresh paint job that they did, the kitchen reno that they did, is worth significantly more than it will be in the market compared to their neighbor that listed for X dollars last year. So that's what we do to get a home evaluated.
Can't also just look at what your neighbor listed for, because perhaps your neighbor has a larger lot, a more recently upgraded roof, or
Two
maybe they
garages.
maybe they added a bedroom in the basement or recently renovated their bathroom. A house, just because you're next door to somebody, doesn't mean that it's worth exactly the same, right?
100%. You know exactly how that works, Robin.
Oh yeah. Okay, so a lot of homeowners will go online. There are all these tools online to help you figure out what your home is worth. You can fill in these little things. How accurate are those?
Not accurate at all. So in the US, like website like Zillow, do a much better job of having an idea of where we stand because in the US, we have what's called an open IDX, which means that all like Centris, the back end of it is open and all sold prices are published with the history of it. And it's just very easy to have all the data. So with all the data that the US has, they can do a much better job of using a generative AI and coming up with an estimated value. Again, they don't know what your home looks like. They don't know the interior. They can't confirm the number of bedrooms, but they have an idea based on your lot size, your building size, and whatever data they have available in the public register. In Quebec, although sold prices are all published on the public register, you have to go address by address to find this information to see
Yeah.
what the latest transaction was. And therefore, there's not one singular website that has everything kind of open, published, very easily to search and find the information you want. And because of that, well, the generative AI doesn't have as much data to go with, and somebody would have to be scraping the public register every single week ultimately and getting an updated list of the prices that have recently sold to have this up to date. And it's not feasible because it costs you $1.50 every time you want to pull something. So there's no real use case to having this open free data for the public and kind of generative AI. So the reality is I've not seen a single valuation tool online that actually is worth its weight. But people are going to keep working on it. People are going to keep trying. People are going to keep trying to build a database that's more robust and has more information. And maybe one day you will be able to value. But I've looked into this extensively, and Montreal is also a very unique city because we have homes that were built 150 years ago and we have homes that were built 3 years ago. And sometimes these homes find themselves on the same street. And therefore, we're not as homogenous as certain other neighborhood cities, states, even, especially when we compare ourselves to the US that have a lot more of kind of these communities that are built all at the same time and off you go. So because of that, like if I think of a property in the plateau, for example, it's very common. I'm going to have a 100-year-old property, and it's not terribly uncommon that we might have a property that had a fire next door to it and was rebuilt 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And these two properties are on the same street, might have a similar bedroom count, but they have completely different valuations because the bricks are 20 years old on one property, the bricks are 100 years old on the other, the foundation is 20, all of these major components that are coming due are going to be very impactful one way or another. So because of the lack of homogeneity in our market, even when I looked at this 10 years ago, I was like, how is an AI going to really figure this out and understand this and kind of go through it? Because it usually takes a walkthrough to understand what we're getting ourselves into in our city. So, yeah.
One question I have is, I think a lot of people are afraid to go to a realtor. They would rather use these online valuation tools because they're afraid of being pressured into listing the home. But that's not the case at all, right? LJ, you'll talk to somebody, tell them what you think their home is worth, but there's no pressure to actually list immediately, right?
We offer free home evaluations, and I literally just, here's the information. Let me know when you're ready to take action on this or not. If it never becomes the case, that's totally fine as well. I believe that every consumer should be as informed as possible, and having an update assessment as to what your property is worth is really great. We have some clients who ask for it every single year, and without fail, when January rolls around or December, we start prepping these annual home evaluations or kind of these home equity reports for all of our clients, and it allows them to see how much equity they're actually sitting on. And maybe they want to get another line of credit, maybe they want to refinance, maybe they just want to have an updated understanding of what their net worth is and what they could use in case if something were to come up. So there's absolutely no obligation. If you're not ready to sell, no problem. If you are, fantastic. And we just want to make sure to provide as much value to people as possible.
And LJ, if you're not sure sometimes about the real value of a property, are you using you could use a chartered appraiser, I assume, to find out about the value, no?
100%. You're always welcome to contact the chartered appraiser. They're going to come do an evaluation for you. Depending on the size of the home, it might cost you anywhere from high $500 to $1,200 for this appraisal. And from there, you'll have, an evaluation of your property prepared by a chartered appraiser that you can take to the bank, that you can use in renegotiations. It really is a case by case for that, but 100%, you're more than welcome to do that as well. We're only ever going to know the real value when we go to market. We
Yeah.
are going to have an opinion of things prior to going to market, but I mean, it even happened to me recently that I prepared an evaluation for a home. I had valued it at about 1.1, 1.2, and a chartered appraiser evaluated it for 1.6, 1.7. And then when I looked at the comparables that they were using this was an NDG. He was using comparables in the Monkland Village, and the home that we were evaluating was west of Cavendish in NDG. So now we're looking
Yeah.
at West NDG compared to Monkland Village. There's very easily a $500,000 spread in the valuation of these properties from one to the other. So even with the chartered appraiser, you got to make sure you are looking at the right comparables and you're challenging them. This was a divorce case. The couple wanted to
Yeah.
kind of settle on a value of the property, and obviously my valuation being so different from theirs brought questions to light. And I think they got another appraisal to kind of really figure out what the reality was.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because it happened to me 2 weeks ago. The same property got appraised by two different appraisal company, and the value when one was 630 and the other one was 670, like a $40,000 difference. Like it's not a perfect science either.
If you're not sure if now's the right time to sell your home, if you want to know how much your home is worth, give LJ a call, 514-500-4040. He'll help you figure it out. Coming up, what exactly are private lenders and how can they help homeowners? We'll speak with a private lender after the news. This is Under One Roof MTL on CJD 800. My name is Robin Flynn, joined as always by Fred Pichette of Fred and Martin Mortgages, LJ Aguinaga of LJ Realties, and we're very excited to welcome in Marc Bissell, president and owner of Castleton Mortgages this week to talk about private lending. Hi, Marc. How are you?
Hey, Robin. I'm doing great. Nice to be on with you.
So we've spoken about private lenders quite a bit on this show, but I don't think we've ever actually spoken to a private lender. So we're excited to have the opportunity to do that today. So for somebody who's never heard of private lending, Marc, what exactly is Castleton Mortgages and what do you guys do?
Sure. Glad to share a bit. And I find it helps demystify a lot of the uncertainty around private lending. So just about us, we've been around in business in Quebec since 1999. So we're in our 27th year. So over that time, we've helped over 5,000, 6,000 clients, in tough situations. In simplest terms, a private lender will lend money secured by a property when either a bank can't move fast enough or the case does not fit the exact, pigeonhole of the bank or the borrower situation. Okay. So the real estate might be a house, a duplex, a triplex, land, all sorts of real estate. Banks are very formula driven, right? Credit scores, ratios, employment history, tax returns, that's what they're looking at. Castleton or other private lenders, they'll look more at the equity in the property and the overall story. Like, we're small enough and, working with, Fred, we understand the story. We listen to the client. With banks, you can't really give the details that kind of make each situation different. A private, we can listen and we can understand. So look, private lenders provide short-term solutions for people who are in transition or really need that tailor-made solution. Everything is done through notaries, just like banks. So it's not like, private. Some people think the worst case, this is not that. This is very institutional, very straightforward. Everything is by the book with the notary, right, clients' rights are protected. We always remember, we take the relationships with clients very seriously. This is often the most important asset that they have. And, they have to treat the situation seriously. And if you're working with a good broker like Fred, you have the confidence that they're going to connect you with someone who is trustworthy. We're not replacing banks. In many cases, we're just bridging a temporary situation. And that's important, because private mortgages are more expensive, but, as the broker will explain, it's a short-term solution. How do I get from A to C? And the private is sometimes that intermediary. So as a private, you want fast, flexible, and a good solution.
Marc, quick question for you. Who typically comes to you? What kind of borrower needs a private lender like Castleton instead of going to the bank?
Yeah, great question, Fred. Look, we help a wide variety of borrowers, okay? Self-employed is a huge category. People who might have strong assets, have some liquidity, but, their income situation may not fit within the bank's profile, okay? a real estate investor who wants to make an offer without condition on a property, they come to Castleton in advance. They get the pre-approval, and then they can go in buy without conditions. That was better when it was a hyper-competitive market. Now a little less so, but look, you'd be surprised. Good properties still go quickly. I mean, that there is strength in the market in the right areas. Borrowers in life transitions. I'm sure you see it all the time. Everybody's always has something going on. Are you getting divorced? Is it an estate situation? Tax arrears, temporary credit issues. Maybe there was a job loss or an illness. Or maybe they're building their house and there was a construction issue and they have a lien. Or a bridge. Maybe they want to buy a new house, but they haven't sold their old house. So there are so many different cases where a bank won't be that solution, but the private can be that 6-month, 12-month kind of gap to solve it. Our clients, they may have excellent equity in their property, but they maybe had a tough year financially. Banks might say no because the file just doesn't work for them. And, or clients who just need speed. They need to move quickly. We can do a deal in a week. It could take a bank 2 months, right?
Right. Especially commercial. And also, Mark, you also do rooming house, which is great too. Like most of bank and any lender out there, they don't want to touch that, but
Yeah, look,
we're kind of doing it,
we look at the file. Does it make sense? Who's the guy? Like, we never want to buy a file. Like, we never want to become an owner of a property. Some privates like that, and that's why you have to work with a good broker to make sure you're working with reputable privates. Like, if we can walk away from this conversation today, it's like, be so careful who you are working with. There are many good ones, but there are some who are less good. Check the Google reviews. Be careful.
It brings me to the next question, Mark. Is a lot of people hear private lender and think it sounds risky or loan sharking, or what would you say to someone who has that perception?
Look, I understand why people think that, because private lender is not an understood term, right? All private lenders are not created equal, as I've just said. And, but it's a very established part of the Canadian market these days, right? And especially over the past number of years, private lending has just become, there's so many different types of borrowers, and banks just do not meet everybody's needs, right? Every deal we do is secured. Every deal is with a notary. So you have the confidence. We're very good private lenders are very transparent about costs, terms, expectations, Fred, we're helping, like you, we're helping people protect the assets that they've spent years building, right? Banks have rigid guidelines. Life is always not so rigid. Let me put it that way. We need the flexibility. Private lenders just fill the gaps. Like I've said that before. And it's not the last stop. And that's really important, that it's a transition between a tough situation and more long-term stability with a bank. The goal is to get back to that stabilized lending. Reputation is huge in this business. We've been doing this 25 years. We have, you look at Google reviews, thousands, I wouldn't say thousands of positive reviews yet, but many, many, many hundreds of good reviews that are each individual stories. Every file is an individual story. Every file is different. And, a good private will listen and find that solution.
What I could say, Mark,
I would just say, before you work with a private, speak to Fred, because you need to make sure that I've just seen too many cases where borrowers, say, what, I want to save on fees. I'm going to get a good deal going directly to some guy I found on a website. Don't do that. We try and be straight, Fred. If it's no, it's no. If it's yes, it's yes. And we follow through. I think that's what you want. It's like you're in a tough, borrowers are in tough situations.
Tough situation.
And they just want someone they can trust. Reliability. That's really the key, because it's a tough situation. Yeah.
Mark, can I ask a couple questions? I think to clarify a few things for people. I know that in industry we kind of understand these terms, but sometimes people don't know what a first rank is or a second rank. Do you do first and second? And then what kind of terms you're offering? Is there a minimum 3, 6, 12? How does it work when trying to set this up for somebody?
Yeah, look, again, very flexible. What is a first mortgage? A first mortgage is Castleton or whatever private will be in first position. You're buying a house for 500,000. You have 150,000 cash down. You need a first mortgage of 350,000 to close a deal. Simple first mortgage. What is a second mortgage? You have a house worth $1 million. You have an existing first of, let's say, 550, but you know what? You have to pay for some taxes or you need it for your business. You borrow another 100,000, which gets registered by the notary on title after the 550. That is considered a second mortgage. Those tend to be a little bit pricier because, if you're following a first mortgage, so any private has to follow already an
There's more
existing.
risk involved for the private, and therefore there's a more fee
Yeah,
associated.
yeah. But if we do underwriting, good underwriting, and we're conservative and understand the situation, it's usually okay. As far as terms goes, look, we've done deals that are 1 day, when it was just a 1 day flip, or we've done deals that are 2 years, right? The key is a good broker will say you don't want to be locked in for a 1 year term where you really just needed 3 months, right? Yes, there may be certain minimums a lender will want just so that it's economically interesting for the lender, but you really want to try and build a good lender, and a good broker will help you build a product that really meets your needs.
Yeah, and usually we'll try to find an exit strategy as well. Like
That's
So,
must be part of the plan.
right.
absolutely. For someone listening right now who thinks maybe they need your help, Mark, where do they go to get more information? Should they contact Fred directly before coming to you?
Absolutely. Look, you want to explain the situation to Fred. Maybe it's a conventional file and not a private, but Fred will recognize that, that it is a situation that is good for privates. Fred Martin team, an amazing team. We've done great work with them. They really represent their clients' interests. I mean, Fred's here, but I'm just saying that. But so he will analyze the file, put it together, and he'll give me a call. Say, Mark, I got this deal. I'll tell him in 15 minutes whether I think we're going to be able to provide a solution. And if so, we're happy to do so. And look, and after the year, he's getting the client ready for the next step, and that's important, right?
Absolutely. Marc Bissell is president and owner of Castleton Mortgages. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mark. Really appreciate your time.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
You're listening to Under One Roof MTL on CJD 800. I'm Robin. That's Fred. That is LJ. Time now for our property of the week. And we are heading to a neighborhood I don't think we've actually been to on this show in this segment before. LJ, this may be a first for Under One Roof. Where are you taking us?
I think we have been there once before because we sold a similar property September last year. So I'm pretty sure we did, but it may have been during my pat leave. So you might be right. You might be right. All this to say, what if your home paid for itself? Well, kind of. 518 to 522 33rd Avenue in LaSalle is a fully vacant triplex with a large 3-bedroom main unit featuring a garage, a finished basement, and a back deck. Plus, you have 2 income-generating 1-bedroom apartments ready to rent immediately. The property is steps from Aguinaga Park and the Metro. We're listed at $1.1 million. Stop by our open house today from 2 to 4 p.m., and Amanda will be there to greet you. Now, some of the things that I love about the property is that it's been owned by the same family since construction in the late 50s. So they've been
Wow.
there from the time it was built. This is the first time this property is going to transact and transfer ownership since then. It's a wonderful property. It's been super well maintained over the years. They've really cared for it. They've done all the necessary updates and upgrades. Your main unit has a renovated kitchen, renovated bathroom, super large, massive utility room, and just kind of storage room in the basement behind the playroom. So a lot of really great features on this property. If you are looking for something of this nature and you want to choose your tenants or you want to have your parents maybe live upstairs, lots of great options to do because we're offering triple occupancy, which is also super rare. So if you have any questions, feel free to give me a call or stop by our open house. Reach out to Amanda. We'd be more than happy to answer your questions and show you the property. LJ Realty's trusted local results.
LG, a triple occupancy available. That's rare, right?
Very rare in this market.
Wow. And as someone who lives close to LaSalle, because Chateauguay is just a hop skip over the bridge, it's like 10 to 15 minutes to get to LaSalle. Have you been to Marchigiani?
I
Boucher
was about to say it.
Marchigiani?
You know what? I was about to say it. I was like, let's talk about food. And the one place that kind of stands out to me is Marchigiani. If you want a 12-foot sandwich, you can go to
Right.
Marchigiani to get a 12-foot sandwich for any special events. But if you want a 6-inch or a 12-inch sandwich, they have those as well. They're absolutely phenomenal. If you want some incredible Italian products, you can walk by. It's like a little Italian market, cantina style. It's wonderful. I say cantina style, but it's like in a beautiful commercial retail space that's actually quite modern and nice looking. But they got everything you need. Stop by. They got some great meatballs, great cookies, snacks, desserts, incredible coffee, you name it. I mean,
Mm.
it's a great little town spot in the heart of LaSalle.
You feel like you're in Italy when you go there.
100%.
100%.
Yeah.
You got no at the cash, kind of checking you in, making sure everything's working. Go over here. No, you'll pay later. It's okay.
Right.
It's the whole system. Yeah.
I know because I just got back from Italy and it's typical kinds of place.
Yeah. Ugh, I spent 3 weeks in Italy years ago, and it is honestly one of my favorite places. I love that as soon as you walk into a place like Marchigiani, they want you to try some cheese or taste an olive, or I
Yeah,
love that. It's just such a vibe.
of
Okay, let's
course.
get to the answer to our trivia question of the week, which Fred says was way too easy. So I guess I was feeling generous this week. So easy to get some cookies from Felix and Norton. Our question was, what is a fixed rate mortgage? The answer: a fixed rate mortgage is a home loan where the interest rate remains the same for the duration of your term. Now, typically, what are the terms for a fixed rate mortgage? You're looking at like 3 to 5, typically, Fred?
Oh, yeah, exactly. The most popular it's 5, but lately a lot of people choose the 3 years term because it's a good term to try to time the market.
Absolutely. So, congratulations to Danny in Montreal West. You are getting some delicious cookies from Felix and Norton. All right, that pretty much does it for us for this week. If you have a question and you'd like to have the answer featured on this show, you can email us underoneroofmtl@gmail.com. You want to get those questions in quickly because we are going to be taking a pause for summer. So I believe we only have 2 shows left after this one. So if you want to get those answers featured on the show, you got to get them into us ASAP. You can also reach out to LJ, Fred, and Martin individually if you like. LJ, where do people go to get in touch with you?
Go to our website, ljrealties.com, or if you want to book a meeting with me directly, go to meetwithlj.com. You can book a time to meet with me directly on there, and we can go over any real estate questions you have or anything real estate adjacent that you're considering. Let me know. You can also find me on all socials with the handle LJ Aguinaga or LJ Realties. Feel free to call or text me at 514-500-4040. I had a lovely caller call me this week. I wanted home evaluation, so we're happy to do that whenever you need. I'm looking to help and support you in any way I can. And if you're looking to free up some of your time, if you have some properties and you just don't want to be in charge of the management for them anymore, please feel free to reach out to my sister company, Plex Doctor. We can take over and give you back your time. You can find us at plexdr.com, or you can call us at 514-500-5222.
I rent a commercial space in a Plex Doctor managed building. I had an issue this week with the HVAC system turning on the air conditioner for the first time. There was a phone call within, I think, 3 minutes of me putting it into the app. And then the owner of the building was in the unit fixing the HVAC system, and it was functional in under an hour. I was so impressed with how that went. So I have nothing but glowing things to say about
Like,
Plex Doctor.
like you can confirm that it works.
It works. It works very, very well. The app is amazing. I love the app so much. It's fantastic. Fred, where do people go to get in touch with you and Martin?
Well, whether you're buying your first home, renewing your mortgage, or just trying to figure out if now is the right time to make a move, give us a call. You could call me at any time. Well, not after 9 o'clock at night, but daytime, early nighttime. You could reach out to me at 514-770-1831. I'll be more than happy to give you a few tips and answer your question. Or you could reach out to us at fredandmartin.com. It'll take 30 seconds to fill up a form. We'll get your email and we'll call you back and fix an appointment with you. And I would say, really, if you have a mortgage to renew or a situation that you need a private or you're not sure or your bank say no, it's worth it. Give us a call or book a meeting with us. And if you have a mortgage renewal, please don't leave money on the table. Let's talk. Like at fredandmartin.com.
Perfect. If you missed anything, you can listen to this show in its entirety on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. For LJ, Fred, and Martin, I'm Robin. Have a wonderful day.